All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're going to trace a single, incredible thread that weaves through some of the most important moments in Judeo-Christian history. We're drawing a direct line from an ancient story of freedom in Egypt through a world-changing sacrifice and all the way to a ritual that millions still practice today. It's a really fascinating journey, so let's get into it.
I mean, think about it for a second. What on earth could possibly connect an angel of death in ancient Egypt to a quiet, modern church service? On the surface, they feel like they're from different universes, right? But, believe it or not, there is a powerful story that links them, a story of salvation that's been told and retold for thousands of years. So we're going to explore this connection by looking at three huge moments: the very first Passover during that 10th plague, the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, and the celebration of the Eucharist. It's really one continuous story.
And look, this is way more than just a history lesson. What we're really getting into is how a core set of symbols, blood, a lamb, a shared meal, how they evolved in their meaning over time, but somehow never lost their essential raw power. It's a story that completely reframes the relationship between humanity and the divine.
Okay, to really get this, we have to go all the way back to the beginning. Our story kicks off with the Israelites enslaved in Egypt and the incredible, dramatic events that would eventually lead to their freedom, all coming to a head on one terrifying night.
So, according to the book of Exodus, this was the big one, the final, absolutely devastating plague that was meant to finally break the Pharaoh's will. It was this moment of divine judgment, but, and this is the key part, it also came with a very specific path to protection for those who would listen.
And the instructions were super precise. This wasn't just some random to-do list, it was a ritual of faith. You had to pick a perfect lamb, one without any flaws. Then, you were to take its blood and smear it on the doorframe of your house. That blood acted as a sign, a marker that basically told the angel of death to pass over that home and leave the firstborn inside unharmed.
And every single element of this meal was just dripping with meaning. The lamb itself, obviously, was a sacrifice that bought their protection. The unleavened bread symbolized how fast they had to get out of there. They had no time to even let it rise. And the bitter herbs were a tangible reminder of the suffering and bitterness of slavery that they were finally leaving behind. This wasn't just dinner. It was the act that forged their entire identity as a redeemed people.
Okay, so now let's fast forward quite a bit. We're talking centuries later. Those same themes of a sacrificial lamb and redemption come roaring back. But this time, they're all embodied in one single person, Jesus Christ.
This one line, spoken by John the Baptist when he sees Jesus, is the absolute pivot point of this whole story. It's not an accident. It is a direct, intentional connection between Jesus and that Passover lamb. For the early Christians, this wasn't just poetic. It was a bombshell declaration that the ultimate, final sacrifice had arrived.
And this really shows you the core theological shift. You see, the Passover lamb's blood offered protection from physical death, and just for one night. Christian theology, on the other hand, sees Christ's blood as offering salvation from spiritual death for all time. The first act is seen as a kind of preview, a foreshadowing of this final, universal sacrifice for all of humanity.
So Christ's sacrifice is understood as creating a new covenant, or basically a new agreement between God and humanity. It fulfills that original promise of Passover, but expands it, shifting the focus from the liberation of one nation to the potential for universal salvation.
But the story doesn't end on the cross. The sacrifice is commemorated and, in a way, made present through an ongoing ritual, a living memorial that brings us full circle right back to that meal in Egypt.
Just think about the setting for a moment. The Last Supper wasn't just any dinner. It was a Passover Seder. Jesus and his disciples were right there, participating in that ancient tradition of remembrance. And it's in that context that he takes these incredibly familiar symbols, the unleavened bread and the wine, and gives them a radical, brand new meaning. And this is a really crucial point. In Catholic teaching, the Eucharist, or communion, isn't just a symbolic act to help you remember something. It's understood as a true participation in that one timeless sacrifice. The belief is that the faithful aren't just looking back in time, they are receiving the grace of that redemption in the present moment.
So when you put all the pieces together, you can really see it, can't you? That unbroken thread running from the doorposts in Egypt all the way to the altar of a modern church. It's a single, epic story told in 3 incredible acts.
Across these thousands of years, 3 really powerful themes just stay constant.
First, the idea of sacrifice, an offering that brings protection. Second, the promise of redemption, deliverance from bondage, whether it's physical or spiritual. And third, the power of community, a shared, ritual meal that creates and holds together a community of faith.
So what started as the blood of a lamb, saving a single people for just one night, evolved into the symbol of Christ's blood, offering eternal salvation for all people. The form changed, the scope got way, way bigger, but that fundamental promise of deliverance through sacrifice, that remained.
And that really leaves you with a fascinating question to think about. This is just one example of an ancient story that continues to resonate with profound meaning for billions. What other symbols, rituals, and stories from our distant past are still quietly shaping the way we see the world, and even ourselves, today?